Anything we need to chat about before we go on the record?
Well, I do have some sort of preliminary questions, concerns about the process. We can do that. I would like to do that on the record. I'm happy to do it off the record so that you've got it before we're on the record. It's totally up to you.
Sure. Let me know what you're up to. And we'll
wow, this could be a long conversation.
But first, I just note that there's no provision in the board's procedural rules for show cause proceedings, so it's not clear to me what the actually, as a preliminary matter, there's a recording going on under VRCP 79.2, which is applicable to this proceeding under 2.103, and this actually would like on the record. Can we go on the record? Yeah. I'm concerned about the recording, and I just want to make sure the recording is in conformance with the civil rules.
Okay, yeah. So
open it, or?
Yeah, we'll go ahead and open the record, and we'll get started then. Good afternoon. This is a technical hearing in docket 8372, an investigation into alleged violations by Barton Solar LLC of the terms and conditions of the final order and certificate of public good issued on June 30th, 2014 in docket 8148. My name is John Cotter, and the Public Service Board has appointed me to serve as hearing officer in this matter. We will start out by taking appearances for the record. Starting with the clerk.
Sheila Grace for the Department of Service.
Yeah, we're going to.
Advocate and counselor for Barton Solar.
And Leslie A. Cadwell, legal counselor and advocate also for Barton Solar. And with us today at council table is Robert Grant, principal of Barton Solar, and also Rob Grant and Charlie Grant, who will be testifying today.
Okay. Okay, so Ms. Cadwell, you had a few matters you wanted to address in the record?
I do. First off, it looks like there's a recording going on, and I'd like to just make sure that the person who's doing the recording is authorized under Vermont Rule of Civil Procedure 79.2, which is applicable to the board's proceedings under 2.103 of the board's rules, and to ensure that the recording is done consistent with that rule so that bench conferences between counsel are not recorded, and that any recording is made available to any member of the press upon request, and that the person recording is actually qualified under the rule. I don't know who the person is, or whether she's a member of the press, or whether she's asked to actually record these proceedings is required by Rule 79.2.
You know, Ms. Cadwell, I've never even read Rule 79.2, to be perfectly honest with you. If you want to pursue this in any great detail, we're going to have to take a recess, and I'm going to have to go upstairs and take a look at it.
I would appreciate that. I don't know what the purpose of this recording, or whether this recording is actually going to be used to further damage my client's reputation in the community and the press. And so I would appreciate, I have no problem with the recording of this proceeding as long as it's consistent with the rule and that the person recording understands what those rules are.
Okay, I'm going to go up and take a look at this, but you know, just to note before I do, this is a public proceeding. And, so,
that's right, and the rule allows for recordings. I want to make sure that they're consistent with the rule.
Okay, and I'll be back in about 10 minutes.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Unless you have grounds for this person not to be recording and submit a motion or direct a motion to be supported by those grounds, she's more than entitled to record these proceedings. The one thing I would note, ma'am, is that Ms. Cadwell is correct. You should not be recording any conferences between the attorneys and their clients, or if there's a bench conference up here between the attorneys and myself, then you shouldn't be recording those, okay?
I understand that.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
And we're also entitled to get a copy. I think anybody is entitled to get a copy that's made available. I don't know who she is or how to get a copy.
I will tell you. I will give you the information. You can have a copy. Anybody that wants a copy, I will give you the information of how to get in touch with me.
Thank you.
Okay?
That's all I wanted. Appreciate that.
Okay, great. And you had another item, I think?
I do. So I want to thank you first for giving Barton Solar the opportunity for a hearing on the unsworn hearsay complaint that was filed last fall by Anthony and Monica Menard. We are here, Barton Solar is here to comply with the board's January 5th order, directing Barton Solar to appear to show cause on the record through sworn testimony, subject to cross-examination, why the board should not impose sanctions pursuant to 30 VSA Section 30 for violation of the requirements set forth in Conditions 1 and 11 of the CPG and Conditions 3 and 13 of the June order. Mr. Grant will explain why it's important for Barton Solar to have a hearing and set the record straight. Mr. Grant and the folks working for Barton Solar worked very hard during construction over the course of the several months to make sure that they were complying with the terms of their CPG and the other permits, the wetland permit, ACOE permit, the Vermont Agency of Transportation permit, and the takings permit, while they watched Mr. Menard mow down the same threatened plant species on his property. The Barton Solar paid $25,000 for a permit to impact, and observing their nearly 1 acre unpermitted pond that's located at least partially in a wetland that Mr. Menard constructed without any permits from any agency.
Excuse me, Ms. Carroll, what's the relevance of this to what Barton Solar did?
So I'm putting this in context why Mr. Grant, it's important for him to set the record straight. I note, at least in the preliminary questions that I had or concerns that I have, I'd like to note for the record, there's no show cause procedure in the board's rules or under a 5.4, so it's not clear from the January 5th order how the facts the board found in the November 19th order and in the January 5th order regarding the Menard's allegations will first be proven by competent admissible evidence under the Administrative Procedures Act and the board's rules. The findings in both of those orders were based on double hearsay, and there's been no independent investigation of the Menard's allegations. So to the extent that the board is assigning Barton Solar the burden to prove the absence of a violation, I think that is objectionable. We'd like to note that objection for the record. The burden to prove the existence of a violation rests with whoever alleges that a violation occurs. And in this case, the only party that alleges Barton Solar violated CPG and the board's rules is the board. I understand that's not the department's position. And so I guess if the board's intending to call any witnesses today, I don't know whether that's the case. We'd like an opportunity to know who that is and to do discovery. Is the board calling any witnesses today?
If the Menards were in attendance, then I'm quite sure the board would like to hear testimony from them, and you would obviously be given an opportunity to cross-examine them. But it is certainly my intent to question Mr. Grant on a number of topics.
So there's no separate process to actually establish that a violation occurred?
That's what we're here for today, to determine whether or not a violation occurred. The original orders that the board issued, if you read them, say that based upon the information provided to the board at that time, it appeared that there was reason for the board to impose a penalty. The board proposed a penalty, which Barton Solar could have simply accepted and paid, or obviously gave them an opportunity to come here, and we would develop an evidentiary record, and we'll see what that evidentiary record shows at the end of the day.
Okay, thank you. I also want to note for the record that that Section 30 authorizes the board to impose penalties on a CPG holder who fails within a reasonable time to obey a final order or decree of the board, and it's not clear from the January 5th order or from the November 19th order what Barton Solar failed within a reasonable time to obey. And I'd ask at least if we could have some clarification on what actions Barton Solar took or did not take to comply with the board's order within a reasonable time.
I think that's going to be a matter for legal memoranda after the fact.
Okay.
Yeah, that's obviously a point of law, but I think it's clear what facts the board is concerned about, which is the allegation by the Menards, and like using the term allegation purposely here, that a truck that was intended for delivery to the Barton Solar laydown area turned around in their driveway and was at least in
And just, I know those are characterized as facts. Those are allegations that were the subject of a letter that's not sworn.
That's why I said allegations.
Right,
Ms. Capwell.
excellent. And then finally, the last clarification is, even assuming that somebody here can prove the allegations that the Menards made, because no one was present other than the Menards on October 2nd, from what I understand, the legal standard that the board applies for a material deviation of the approved plans, at least the legal standard that the board has adopted consistently, is whether the deviation raises a potential for significant issue under the applicable review criteria. And the November 19th order and the January 5th order don't explain which of the substantive review criteria are at issue for the alleged deviation from the approved plans. And we submit that the driveway in this case, as made clear in the underlying CPG proceeding, is a commercial driveway used by large trucks and was approved through an Act 250 and zoning permit. So it's not clear how a truck turning around in a driveway like that has the potential for a significant issue under their review criteria. And so I'd ask to understand what review criteria we are supposed to address in explaining why it wasn't a material deviation from the approved plans.
That again sounds to me like a matter for legal memorandum. The assumption is that you would argue to the board that even if the truck turned around, it was not a material deviation. That's a legal argument.
So the board doesn't have in mind any particular review criteria when it issued the notice of penalty. Is that correct?
The board has in mind the allegations from the Menards that a truck utilized a truck bound for Barton Solar, utilized the Menards' private property to turn around at approximately 9 p.m. on the evening of October 2nd. That's not, and if those facts prove to be true, then I believe the board has in mind that a violation of the CPG agreement.
And who is prosecuting those facts? The allegations?
It is not a prosecution, it's an investigation. It's the board's supervisory authority over a CPG holder in the state of Vermont, and the board's responsibility to ensure that CPG is complied with.
In my experience, the show cause hearings usually had findings, or there was a hearing on whether the violation existed. So today, are we to determine whether a violation existed?
Ms. Capwell, I explained this to you already. We're here to develop an evidentiary record to determine if there are sufficient facts to decide whether or not a violation of the CPG occurred. Okay?
Yeah, thanks.
I thought I stated that very clearly about 5 minutes ago.
Thank you.
Okay.
I wasn't sure who was actually advocating on behalf of the fact that there was a violation. That was my question. It wasn't what the proceeding, as I understand that, it was who is going to first establish the fact of a violation. And do I understand that that's Barton Solar's responsibility to bring witnesses that you will inquire of to see if there was a violation?
That is correct.
Okay, thank you.
Yes. Is that everything?
It is.
All right. So the department, Ms. Grace, I take it are you just here observing today? Or?
Yes.
Okay. Ms. Cadwell, were you intending to move Mr. Grant's affidavit and original statement from, I think it was dated October 21st, into the record?
We were only intending to move his live testimony today and his affidavit.
His affidavit, okay.
And I have the original. Ms. Remington is actually going to, I don't know if we're doing direct or cross or what we're doing exactly. But Ms. Remington is going to handle Mr. Grant and will offer the affidavit. If there's no objection to having it admitted, we could just do it now.
Well, any objection?
No objection.
No. I also think that the board would appreciate having Mr. Grant's original response entered as an exhibit as well. If you're not intending to do that, I'll just have it marked as board 1.
Okay, you can mark it as board 1.
Okay. So, all right, then I guess we should start with Mr. Grant.
No,
So is the affidavit admitted?
Is it all marked and everything? And
Yeah.
yes.
Affidavit admitted?
I mean, it is Barton too.
Barton 2? What's Barton 1?
It's gonna be a contract.
Oh, okay.
Let me give you a copy. You already have a copy of that.
The contract?
Of that, oh, okay, right.
Here.
It'll be like right at the top. Like number 4 question.
Okay.
Do you wanna see it?
If it's not something I've seen before.
Sure.
I mean, I'm
Yeah,
gonna
yeah,
need
it's
a
really
copy.
short, yeah.
Okay.
That'll be
Okay, well, so why don't we just have Ms. Remington proceed and just move them both in when
Okay.
the time is,
That works.
Mr. Grant, if you could raise your right hand, please. Do you swear or affirm under the penalties of perjury that the testimony you're about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you very much. Ms. Remington, you may proceed.
Mr. Grant, could you please state your name for the record?
Robert Grant,
And can you tell me where you're employed?
Essex Capital Partners.
And how long have you been doing solar development and construction?
I've been in construction, real estate development for approximately 25 years. I've been in solar development for approximately 6 years.
And can you explain to Mr. Cotter why you requested to have a hearing today?
Yeah, basically, I wanted an opportunity to be heard relative to this allegation and what appears to be, quite frankly, a continuation of a process where, various articles are appearing in newspapers, casting aspersions about, our company's compliance with rules and regulations and what our intentions are. And, frankly, we're a small family-run business. We have done quite a bit of business here in the state of Vermont. We intend to continue to do business in the state of Vermont. And our reputation is quite frankly important to us. And I think that, when allegations like this rise to this level and obviously, we feel they need to be addressed, and we want the opportunity to be heard. And frankly, that's why we're here.
Can you give an example of how negative impacts to your reputation would affect your business?
Well, I think at one level, obviously, it impacts any, potentially any appearance we might have before the Public Service Board going forward on future projects. I mean, there'll be questions about, how we operate, how we do business. In addition to that, as you know, solar development has many different forms of federal and state support, one of which is what's called the Rural Electricity for America program, or REAP grant program, and we've applied for a REAP grant. We successfully obtained one when we did a project in White River Junction, and we have an application pending. And when allegations such as these about non-compliance with permits and non-compliance with regulations are raised, which they have been, quite frankly, jeopardizes our relationships not only with the local permitting agencies but also with the federal agencies.
And have you complied with the conditions of your CPG?
I frankly believe we've complied with every condition of the CPG, and there have been many, as you know.
And do you have a compliance officer for the
Yes.
project?
One of the requirements that we had was to an environmental compliance officer who was responsible for overseeing our compliance with the various permits associated with wetlands, soil, tree management, plantings, etc.
Okay, if we could just start by clarifying your relationship with the company that delivered the solar modules. It takes a second to get through, so I just preface this, but there's a multi-step process, and I think it's helpful for the board to understand how this works. So, first, did you enter into a contract with Suncream Inc. to procure all the solar modules for the project?
Yes.
And I've handed a copy of the contract, portions, a redacted copy, portions of the contract to the hearing officer, and Mr. Grant also has a copy. And Mr. Grant, can you identify for the record what that document is in your own words?
This is a copy of a portion of what we term the equipment purchase agreement between Barton Barton Solar and Sunpreme. Sunpreme was the manufacturer of the modules. They're based in California. But just to clarify or shed a little more light on it, the actual modules were manufactured in Hong Kong. And so basically the process of then moving them was
Yeah, we'll get it.
basically,
I just want to make sure we get this
yeah.
document in. And was the document prepared in the ordinary scope of the business of Barton Solar?
Yes.
And does Barton Solar maintain this document in its business records for the project as part of its regular business practice?
Yes.
And did you retrieve them? Did you retrieve this document from your business records as they are normally kept?
Yes.
So please note I marked it Barton 1, and there are no objections. I've been for the amendment.
If I hear no objections, Barton wants it.
Sure. Which part? Okay, so going to the contract. According to the contract, who is responsible for the production, transport, and delivery of the modules?
Sunpreme Incorporated manufacturer.
And did Sunpreme hire other companies to complete aspects of those responsibilities?
Yes, as we came to learn during the process.
And did Sunpreme contract with a logistics company to manage the shipment of the modules and the transport of the modules?
Yes.
And at the time you signed the contract with Sunpreme, did you know that Sunpreme would be hiring a company to handle the logistics of shipping and transport?
No.
And when did you learn that Sunpreme had contracted with Hellman Worldwide Logistics to manage that shipment and transport?
It was basically the first time that they provided us with one of the periodic updates as to the manufacturing and shipping process. What we asked them to do was to break down exactly how they were going to be shipping the modules by container, when they were being manufactured in their plant in Hong Kong, when they were actually being loaded on container ships in Hong Kong, when they were expected to arrive on the west coast of the United States, and therefore when we could expect to receive them in Barton. And it was, I think it was on one of those periodic reports, they had a footnote which basically said that they had retained Hellman Worldwide as their logistics coordinator.
And did Sunpreme or Hellman ever communicate to you who was going to actually be delivering the modules to Barton?
No.
Since the Menards filed their complaint, have you communicated with Sunpreme about whether Hellman hired other companies to do the transportation?
Yes, we subsequently found out that Hellman then contracted for the actual delivery of the modules with long-haul carriers.
Did you communicate regularly with Sunpreme about the module production, shipment, and transportation?
Yes.
And can you explain how often you communicated with Sunpreme?
As part of this contract, we required them to deliver to us a weekly report updating exactly where all the various containers were, all the various components of the order. And we would then review it on the phone once a week. We'd go through it, and they would give you, basically we would walk through the schedule. They would give you as much clarity into it as I requested about, okay, and my concern was obviously them procuring not only the shipment, but procuring the raw materials and making sure they had factory space and that they were actually producing the modules in a timely fashion, considering the lag time between the actual manufacturing and the delivery.
So outside of the weekly updates, you also exchange calls and emails
Yes.
throughout the course. Did you communicate with Sunpreme about the location and time conditions that were included in your CPG?
Yes.
And can you explain how you initially communicated those conditions to Sunpreme?
Well, initially, it was in one of the first conversations after we entered into the contract. I made them aware of the conditions we had relative to hours of operation, hours where we could accept delivery, and the location of where we could accept delivery, where the laydown area was located, et cetera. And then subsequently, I followed that up with a memorandum that I sent to them.
Great.
To Marilla.
As admitted, we have Barton 2. If you could look, you have a copy of Barton 2 in your notes or a copy?
Yes, I
Barton
do,
two?
but just to clarify for the record, it actually was not yet affirmatively admitted. So
Oh, sorry.
Barton 2 is admitted.
I told Leslie that if there was something I was gonna miss, it was gonna be making sure that you said it was admitted. So thank you. So, Barton 2, will you flip to page 1, attachment 1,
Mhm.
and explain what we're looking at?
What we're looking at is a copy of the memorandum that I sent to Sunpreme, to my contact at Sunpreme, who I negotiated the contract with, which basically was memorializing what the restrictions were on deliveries in terms of when, but also giving clarity as to exactly where deliveries were to occur.
And can you tell me when that memo was dated?
It's August 1, 2014.
And would you read for us the body of the memo starting at per our permit?
Per our permit, all deliveries must occur between 7 a.m. and 5 p.m. weekdays or between 8 a.m. and 5 p.m. on Saturdays. No deliveries can occur on Sundays or holidays. Also to confirm, all deliveries must take place at the laydown area located at the Sugar Mill Farm, located north of the project site on Route 16, attached is the locus map of the delivery area.
And could you look at page 2 of that attachment? And can you explain what we're looking at there?
Well, basically, we're looking at a copy of an A&R natural resource aerial of the area, which I use to identify, sort of at a high level, what we were talking about, knowing that they would be bringing modules in probably off of Interstate 91, showing them where the interchange was to get on Route 16, showing them then where our site was in proximity to that interchange.
And who wrote on the map?
I did.
And can you explain each of the areas where you wrote on the map?
Sure.
Starting on the left.
Well, I basically, just going from the top down, actually, first I circled the interchange, and I identified it at the top of the map that what they were looking for is exit 25, which is the 1691 interchange. And then heading further down 16, heading south, I identified the delivery area, i.e. the laydown area at Sugar Mill Farm. And further down, indicated where the actual project site was.
And can you switch to page 3 of attachment 1?
Sure.
And can you tell me what we're looking at, just the broad? We're looking at a map.
We're looking at basically a blown-up version of the aerial, which focuses and drills down and actually blows up the area where the actual laydown area and the delivery area, our laydown area, our delivery area, where they are, excuse me, on Route 16, and indicating their proximity to the I-91 Route 16 interchange.
And can you tell me who wrote on this map?
I did.
And can you explain the address on the upper left-hand corner?
That address is the street address for Sugar Mill Farm.
And the distance on the right side, can you explain what that is?
0.5 miles. That's basically an approximation of how far that delivery and laydown area are south of the 1691 interchange.
And so,
Again, just to give them a sense of how far they're going to be driving or where they're going to see them.
so the address and the mileage marker, is that directing Suncream to deliver at the approved laydown area?
Correct.
Can you point to the Menards property on this map?
The Menards property is not on this map.
Did you ever direct Suncream to deliver modules to any other location than the approved Sugar Mill laydown area?
No.
In your opinion, would it be reasonable for a driver to interpret the maps or your instructions as authorizing deliveries to or use of the Menards driveway?
No.
If we could turn to the second attachment, and if you could just explain what we're looking at here.
basically, this is one of those weekly periodic updates that I mentioned that we required that Suncrete provide to us, which basically lays out on, I guess what's identified as page 3 of 7. You can see what we're trying to do there is we're tracking every shipment, when the modules are being manufactured, when they're being loaded, excuse me, FOB Hong Kong, what their estimated arrival date, either to Oakland or Long Beach, or there was some debate about whether they were going to be shipped to San Francisco. And then ultimately when they expected to be offloaded, clear customs, loaded on board trucks, and what the estimated arrival dates were for those deliveries in Barton.
And can you tell me how many weekly updates are included in this exhibit?
In this particular exhibit, I believe it's 2.
And can you tell me what dates those weekly updates are from?
Sure. The first one is dated September 17, and the second one is dated October 8.
And were these the weekly updates that were immediately before and after the October 3rd delivery?
There might have been one actually, let's see, 17 and 7, 24, there might have been one on September 24. But, yeah, this one is just prior, and this one is just after.
So as you said, these updates contain the schedule and confirmation of all the module deliveries, is that correct?
Mm-hmm.
And could we flip to page 4, please?
Yes.
And does this indicate that a delivery was planned for October 3rd?
Yes. Shipment number 4.
And on page 7, does it indicate that a delivery was completed on October 3rd?
Exactly. Once, and this is not in color, but if you saw a color version of this, as deliveries, as items were completed, they were basically colored in, and that's why you see these variations. So everything that is, the darker hue was actually in green, which indicated that it had been complete, i.e. modules had been completed all the way through at that point. They'd all been loaded in Hong Kong at that point. A certain number had already arrived on the East Coast. A different number had cleared customs and been loaded on trucks, and a different number had actually made it to Barton. That's what all that's indicating.
Do either of the weekly updates communicate a scheduled or completed delivery for October 2nd?
No.
Did you talk with Suncrete after September 17th about the planned delivery on October 3rd?
Probably in the context of reviewing this weekly report, just making sure that it was on track.
And how did you know what time of day these deliveries would occur?
Well, basically, once the truck had been loaded on the West Coast and had started moving across country, then we would start to drill down. Okay, what's the ETA in Barton, and then we would pin down exactly when that truck was expected to arrive.
And did it matter to you what time of day the truck would arrive?
Absolutely.
And can you explain why it would matter to you?
Well, basically, first of all, we're offloading a 70-foot long tractor trailer, basically in the middle of a parking lot. It's not a tailboard loading situation where you're just backing up to a warehouse and loading crates with a motorized pallet. So there was a lot of coordination that had to go into offloading these crates. Any of these shipments usually contain somewhere between 22 and 25 crates or pallets. Each pallet contains about 26 modules. Each pallet weighs about 1,100 pounds. So basically those pallets had to be picked off the back of the truck by some type of a piece of equipment, in this case a fork with an extender or a wall, and then basically taken off the truck, set down, and then they had to go through a process of inspection and then be sorted based on their wattage, because we were taking a mixture of 340 and 350 watt modules, and we had them designated for different areas of the array. So once they came off the truck, they had to be sorted in the laydown areas so that basically when they were, again, going to be picked for deployment into the array field, they were being picked from the source. So between having people who are, operating two pieces of equipment to pick the crates, another person to sort them, and get them designated in the right area, and then potentially another person operating a third piece of machinery to actually pick crates up from the laydown area and move them over to the array field for deployment. You're talking about 3 pieces of heavy equipment and probably 4 to 5 people involved. And those are people that were taking off the job site who are otherwise responsible for installing the racking or hanging the modules or something else, and having that equipment readily available in the laydown area to accept delivery. And so, in that whole process for each container, each tractor trailer probably took the better part of an hour. So what you didn't want to have happen is have 3 pieces of equipment and 5 people standing there for 2 hours waiting for the truck.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. When did the module delivery arrive on October 3rd?
It was approximately 8 a.m.
And did you ever talk to the delivery driver before 8 a.m. on October 3rd? When he arrived, where were you?
I was on the construction site. I can't remember whether I was over by the construction trailer or over the laydown area. I think I might have been in the laydown area.
And was anyone else at the delivery site when the driver pulled in that morning?
Yeah, we had Dave Oldfield, who was the project super for RBI, who was operating one of the forks and picking the crates. Tom Bergeron from J. McDonald, which was our site contractor that was operating in support of RBI in handling the modules as they were coming off the trucks. And my 2 sons were there as well.
And can you explain what happened when the delivery arrived? Like process-wise, you explained a little bit, but kind of some process for having its driver drop something off.
Well, basically, the truck arrives and the rear of the truck is locked. It's sealed with a shipping seal. So what happens is the driver then comes out and presents a shipping slip, and then we cut the lock off the back of the truck and open it, and then we go through a process of verifying that what's on the shipping manifest is actually in the truck. We do a visual inspection of the module crates while they're still in the truck before we actually start to move them to make sure there hasn't been any damage in transit. Then we start a process of actually offloading the crates, which will allow us to inspect the entire crate once it's actually out of the truck, see the further pallets that are in the rear of the truck or the front. And then finally, after all the pallets have been offloaded, then we would ultimately sign off on the delivery, and that would basically be it.
And can you explain the interaction that happened with Mr. Menard on the morning of October 3rd?
The truck had just arrived, and shortly afterwards, I think we were in the process, we had just cut the lock off the truck. We were early on. Mr. Menard drove into the laydown area in his pickup truck, and I hadn't spoken to him at all, frankly, in probably the prior 6 months. So I wasn't sure exactly why he'd be there. He got out of his truck and he immediately came over to me and started making these allegations about how a truck had turned around in his yard the night before at 9 o'clock, and it was this truck, and had damaged his fence, and there was a problem. He was extremely agitated, quite frankly. And I basically said, I have no idea whether any truck turned around in your yard. I don't know if this truck, I wasn't there the night before, so I wouldn't have had any idea as to whether that had occurred or not. Mr. Menard then turned and accosted the driver and started heated exchange with him, and this driver, quite frankly, didn't speak very good English at all. That was what I was ascertaining as you know, having interacted with him for 5 minutes.
And could you hear the conversation between Mr. Menard and the driver?
No, because frankly, looking at the way Mr. Menard was acting and knowing the history, I quite frankly thought it was in my best interest to get away from that situation and so and not be involved.
And did Mr. Menard at some point talk about calling the police?
Yeah, Mr. Menard came back and said, "I'm going to call the police," and I actually said, "I think that's a great idea."
And can you explain why you thought that was a good idea?
Because frankly, I thought they would calm down the situation and get to the bottom of it. I mean, if in fact this truck or if some truck had driven on Mr. Menard's property and damaged his property, I thought the appropriate venue for him would be to call the police and to file a complaint.
And did anyone call the police?
Not that I'm aware of.
And Mr. Menard then left the driver?
Mr. Menard then
lay down area?
got back into his truck and drove up.
And did you talk to the driver after Mr. Menard left?
I did.
And did you ask him about the interaction with Mr. Menard?
I did. And basically all he said was, in broken English, I gave him my insurance information.
And did you ask him any additional questions?
No.
Did he ask you any questions?
No.
Did you talk to anyone else about the incident after Mr. Menard left?
Yes, I called my son Charlie over, and I basically said to him that given the history with the Menards and given some of the allegations that have been made, I said I thought it might be prudent for him to go down and to take pictures of the Menard driveway to see if there was any evidence that what he was alleging had actually transpired.
And did Charlie do what you asked?
Yes, he did.
And can you tell me about when Charlie went to inspect the area? Like after, I mean, in relation to when Mr. Menard left, so how long after Mr. Menard
Probably
left?
no more than, say, 10 or 15 or 20 minutes maybe after Mr. Menard left.
Okay, thank you. Did you ever communicate about or schedule a delivery for the night of October 2nd at 9 p.m. with Sun Cream, Hellman, or any other trucking company?
No.
Were any Barton Solar representatives, agents, contractors, or subcontractors present at the project site, the laydown area at Sugar Mill Farm, or the Menards property on October 2nd at 9 p.m.?
No.
Could someone unload the truck without help?
No.
Would there be any benefit to you if the modules arrived at 9 p.m. at night?
No.
Would it have been a disadvantage?
Yes.
Can you explain why?
Well, first of all, other than the fact there's nobody there to unload them, but if I had to theoretically pay people to be there, that's time and a half for overtime, number one. And number two, there was no ability for us to do it anyway. There were no construction lights that had been set up at the laydown area. There was no ability to operate after dark. And there was no way that we would try to operate machinery and try to, handle 1,100, 1,200 pound pallets, frankly, in the dark.
And did you ever direct any company or individual to use the Menards driveway or property as a turnaround or a location for deliveries at any point in the project?
No.
Would using the Menards driveway or property have been advantageous to the project's construction?
No.
And can you explain why you chose Sugar Mill as the laydown area for the project?
Well, basically, Sugar Mill offered both a already pre-existing gravel area that we could use to actually lay down material. It wasn't as if we would have to create one by bringing material. This was a pre-existing gravel area that was adjacent to the barn. But it also had a large area which would allow trucks to turn off and then could basically swing right back onto Route 60 without having to turn around, without having to back in and, conduct any kind of like a 3-point turn. So it actually served, it was perfect.
Thank you. Just a couple last questions. Is the Barton project generating revenue?
Yes, it is.
Is it at the levels that you anticipated?
No, it isn't.
And can you explain why? I mean, just a real brief, just general sense of why.
Well, actually, a couple of things. We've had some technical issues relative to the operation of our inverters. We've had basically low solar irradiance for the first couple of months that we've been up and running, and we've had some pretty aggressive snow cover and temperatures that have not promoted shedding of that snow, which reduces the production and productivity of the module.
Thank you. Just two clarifying questions. Earlier you said that Charlie and Rob were both present at the time the truck pulled into the laydown area on October 3rd. Are you sure that Charlie and Rob were there at the time the truck came?
Oh, at the time the truck actually first pulled in,
Right.
they may not have been there. They may have arrived while we were in the process of offloading.
And then the other one is Suncrete fully liable and responsible for the modules before they are delivered?
Yes.
And can you explain where their responsibility ends?
Basically, the way the contract was written, they are responsible for the modules through delivery and through an inspection period when we have the opportunity to offload the pallets. If the pallets are going to sit in the laydown area, you really don't know if there's been any damage to the modules that are inside those pallets until you actually open them. And we had negotiated an approximately a 10 business day inspection period when we would actually have the ability to deploy the pallets into the array field and actually open the pallets and actually physically visually inspect the modules.
Thank you. And so I move the witness available for cross.
Okay. Ms. Grace?
No questions.
No? Joanne, how are you doing?
Fine.
Okay. All right, I do have some questions for Mr. Grant. So obviously you're aware of the Menards allegations, the complaint that they filed with the board that a tractor trailer bound for the Barton Solar site turned around in their driveway at approximately 9 p.m. on October 2nd, correct?
Yes.
And I think Bridget actually asked, or I should say Ms. Ranathan, asked quite a few of the questions that I was going to ask, so I'm going to do a little triage here. So on October 3rd, Mr. Menard approached you before he approached the truck driver, is that correct?
Yeah. I'm pretty sure that's the way, I was standing, it's kind of like at the end of the truck, the driver was kind of somewhere between the cab and the rear, and Mr. Menard pulled in and came straight at me, so, yeah, I guess he came to me first.
Okay. So when he then subsequently was talking with the truck driver, you were aware of his concerns?
Well, he had already told me what he said, what he alleged had occurred, so I knew why he was there.
Okay. And after Mr. Menard left, the only conversation you had with the truck driver was the truck driver telling you that he gave Mr. Menard his insurance information?
And that's kind of a summation of what I could get out of the truck driver, because quite frankly, he didn't speak English. He spoke very basic, broken English.
Mm-hmm.
And I asked him what happened, and he said I gave him, he said something to the effect of, which I interpreted to be, I gave him my insurance information.
But you didn't inquire any further at that point?
I did not.
And, I'm curious, at that time, you knew what the Menards were saying happened, correct? You have to answer real quick.
Yes.
And the truck driver was right there, and I understand there may have been some language limitations, but you didn't even bother to either confirm or have him deny what the Menards had alleged in terms of the truck using their property to turn around?
Well, at one level, I said it's between the truck driver and Mr. Menard. They had a conversation. Mr. Menard seemed to have been satisfied, I guess, with what he was provided with, and Mr. Menard left. I assume having satisfied himself to whatever he was, whatever he had been provided with.
So weren't you even curious whether or not what Mr. Menard said was accurate?
Well, that's why I sent my son down because in my mind, the best way for me to either verify or not the allegation would be to go down and actually do a physical inspection and take pictures. Because if there had been this level of damage and whatever, if this truck had ostensibly knocked down the fence or damaged the fence, there would have been evidence of that. So that's why I turned to my son and I said, why don't you go down, take a look, see if there's any evidence that this actually happened, and take pictures. That to me was the best way to verify it. Then it's, it's not, well, Mr. Menard says this, the truck driver might say that. I figured that there was physical evidence on the ground. That's what I would want to see.
And so in other words, you discounted the possibility that the truck driver and Mr. Menard's statements would be in agreement?
I really didn't know what to think or who to believe at that point, quite frankly, because Mr. Menard had made numerous allegations against us previously in a number of different forms on a number of different levels. And again, my gut reaction was, okay, if something transpired, there'll be physical evidence of it, and I sent my son down there to take a look.
Let me ask you, if you were operating that truck and did not turn around in Menard's driveway, and even though Mr. Menard, say, accused you of it, would you give him your insurance information under those circumstances?
I can't speak for what the truck driver was thinking.
I asked what you would do.
Well, if I had an issue that I wanted to either not come to light, or if I was in a situation where, for example, I was being accosted by somebody who was making an allegation and all I wanted to do was get him away from me, or if I had a situation where this guy could have been, we don't know what his status was. Was he an undocumented alien?
Excuse me, Mr. Grant, that's not what I asked you. What I asked you is, if somebody approached you.
Mr. Clark, I just have to ask a clarifying question, because Bob was kind of making a speculation of saying, well, you asked me a hypothetical, I'm asking you a hypothetical, I'm giving you my hypothetical back. I mean, I think that would be.
No, he's actually avoiding the question.
Oh, I mean, I didn't just answer yes or no. I mean, do you have an answer yes or no? Like, would you provide your insurance information? Can I restate the question?
I'll restate it.
So it's not a hypothetical? Can you just ask me yes or no?
If I was being confronted with a hostile individual who was making allegations, whether I believed them or not, and I thought by giving him my insurance information I could get him to get away from me, I would absolutely do it.
You would, okay.
Absolutely.
So you, as you sit here today, you attribute no significance to the fact that the truck driver gave Mr. Menard his insurance information?
None at all.
I can't. It's kind of odd because there's no real evidence, and I'm not objecting to the hearing officer's question, but it's the basis for the question. There's nothing to say that happened. We have no confirmation that the driver did that.
We have Mr. Grant's testimony that the driver told him that he gave his insurance information to Mr. Menard.
Can you answer your question again? I guess based on that, it's just Mr. Grant saying that he heard the driver say that.
That's you mischaracterizing the state of the record.
No, I'm just asking.
Just a minute, Ms. Remington, okay?
Yeah.
The driver, according to Mr. Grant, the driver told Mr. Grant, I gave him my insurance information. I gave Mr. Menard my insurance information.
And then what's your question?
My question is, as he sits here today, do you not attribute any significance to that fact?
The fact that he said it, or the fact that he gave it?
The fact that the driver told you that he gave the insurance information to the Menards.
Like I said, I attribute significance to it from the standpoint that if I was in the driver's shoes, I would have done the exact same thing to get Mr. Menard, to basically get Mr. Menard away from me. You got a hostile individual who's confronted him making all kinds of wild allegations, true or false. If I'm the truck driver, as I sit here today, I give him my insurance information, and if Mr. Menard wants to file a claim with my insurance carrier, then they get to find out what did or did not happen. That's the easiest way for the truck driver to get out of the middle of it. So absolutely.
Okay.
I mean, don't you agree?
I'll ask the questions here. Okay. So, why wouldn't you just have simply asked the truck driver if he had turned around in the Menards driveway the night before?
Because at the time, Mr. Menard had had a conversation with the truck driver. They had reached whatever consensus they had arrived at. Mr. Menard had then left the property. I assume either satisfied or he was actually going to go call the police, which I thought would have been a good thing. The police didn't show up, so I guess at the end of the day, he was satisfied. I honestly didn't think it was within my purview to start interjecting myself between Mr. Menard and the truck driver, number one. And number two, again, rather than asking the truck driver a question, I did what I considered to be an even more prudent course, which was to send my son down to physically inspect this area which Mr. Menard alleged had been damaged. And if my son came back and said, I went down, I took pictures, the fence has been knocked down and there are tire ruts, indicating that a 75-foot tractor trailer had turned around in this guy's front yard, then I would have said, this guy must have turned around in his yard.
Since the board initiated this investigation, did you take any further actions to try and educate yourself with respect to Menard's allegations that a delivery truck turned around on their property?
I assumed, quite frankly, that actually, no, I didn't. I raised the issue with Sunpreme. I told them that this allegation had been raised by a neighbor. I asked Sunpreme to investigate with Hellman whether any type of a claim had been made with the insurance carrier, whether any kind of a report had been filed with anyone, and whether there had been any follow-up dialogue. And what came back to me from Sunpreme was no claim had been made with any insurance carrier, nothing had been registered with Hellman, either through the carrier or directly. Nothing had come through from any source. The first Sunpreme was aware of it, and the first Hellman was aware of it was when I raised it with Sunpreme. And since we never heard anything from the local police, which I assume if Mr. Menard had filed a complaint with the police, somebody would have contacted us to say, okay, there's this allegation, what do you know? I assumed that the whole thing had been resolved in some fashion.
And you didn't ask Sunpreme to interview the driver?
I asked Sunpreme to make inquiry into Hellman. And quite frankly, I think when they came back and said, we asked Hellman, that was the first time I was even educated of the fact that Hellman, this driver, was not an employee, a W-2 employee of Hellman, that this was an independent third-party jobber that they had subcontracted. So I was at that point relying on what was coming back to me from Sunpreme.
Mr. Connor, I'd like to address you as an officer of the court. I can't be a witness, but I can tell you that I have been unable to track down this person.
In your October 21st response, do you remember filing that report?
Yes.
You seem to be suggesting that any damage to the Menard's lawn and fence may have been caused by Mr. Menard bringing his equipment in and out of the yard. Do you have any information to suggest that that factually occurred?
No, and I don't think I was stating definitively that that was the source of the damage. I think what I tried to do was to educate the board to the fact that there are multiple trucks that travel Route 60 on a daily basis, that Mr. Menard happens to be in the construction business, which means he's routinely moving heavy dump trucks and trailers carrying heavy equipment in and out of that particular driveway, that he's also selling cars, used cars at the end of his driveway, and that just because Mr. Menard steps up and says, there was damage to my fence, that truck did it. That could be true, that could be false, I don't know. But at the end of the day, that couldn't potentially be the only source of what may or may not have damaged that fence. If the fence, quite frankly, was damaged at all, because my son went down and took pictures of it, he came back, showed me the pictures, there was no damage to that fence that I could see. So that was really my intent. I wasn't trying to say that actually Mr. Menard had damaged it. I was merely trying to educate the board to the fact that these are some of the potential other options that could or could not play a role in what may or may not.
Right. Now, the photographs you're referring to, I would assume would be the 3 photographs that you attached to your October 21st response? I can show it to you if you
Yeah,
like, sir.
please.
Actually, if you would, if you could just identify that entire document for the record.
Sure, this is a, how should I describe it? This is a statement submitted in this docket that I submitted in response to the Menard October 5 letter. Is that sufficient?
Yeah, sure.
Can I, only because you didn't make copies of for the stuff you're gonna hand out, did you? Awesome. Thank you very much. There you go. The downside of keeping electronic records.
Yes. And there are 3 photographs attached to that reply, sir? Is that correct?
Yes.
And are those the photographs that you've been discussing earlier today that your son took after the encounter with Mr. Menard on the morning of October 3rd?
Yes.
And those are pictures of the fence at the end of the driveway, correct?
Correct.
There's no pictures of the lawn up closer to the house, is there?
Well, there's the first picture, which actually is showing most of the lawn that's just behind the fence. That's the driveway running, you know, sort of the 2 fence sections. That's this picture here.
Yes, the first picture of
Yeah,
the
and
fence
then-
sections on the left.
Yeah, so you've got the driveway, which would be running between those 2 fence sections. You can't see the back one because it's just behind the one you can see.
Right.
And then you've got the lawn area, which I think was the lawn area that he alleges the truck turned around on, which is that area right in the foreground, to the right of the phone pole.
How far off the road approximately is Mr. Menard's house, do you know?
His house.
I actually have an exhibit that I'm going to introduce through Charlie that has approximate distances, if you would find that helpful. We can actually offer it now for identification, just because I'd rather have you get one answer instead of 5.
Right.
Excuse me. Yeah. So, do you have, oh, here it is. Sorry. Do you want to do this? Do you want me to have, do you want to have Bridget run it through him, or do you want me to do the, okay,
Is it okay with you if Leslie does this part, because I didn't.
to offer it and get it in? Okay.
Sorry.
So, Mr. Grant, I'm handing you, it's been marked as Barton 3. Do you recognize this document?
Yes.
And could you identify it for the record, please?
It's an Act 250 land use permit. That was submitted by Anthony and Monica Menard.
I'm keeping in mind the hearing officer's question about the distance. I'd like you to turn to the page that has a schematic.
Yep.
You have that? And with the hearing officer's question about the distance from Joanne, what was the hearing officer's question? Was it the distance from the driveway to the house?
From the, I think
Yeah,
it
it
was
was
the road to
the
the
distance
house.
from the road to the Menards residence.
Perfect.
Okay. Based on the schematic, I would say, 300 plus 44, plus 220, plus 780, probably about plus 4. So, quick math, I got a pencil?
I'm
300.
handing Mr. Grant a calculator,
Okay, that's fine.
and
No,
the
three-
calculator now says 0.
Oh, boy. So it's 300 plus 44 plus 220 plus probably half of 75, which is, what's it, 37?
Yep.
Whoops, I just did that wrong. Hold on. See if I can do this. See, I need my calculator, and I would know what I'm doing. I get 600. I get 601 feet, 600 feet plus or minus.
Give or take, okay.
Yeah.
Thank you. So as you sit here today, I'll withdraw that. I'm going to ask you a hypothetical, and it's going to be a little odd sounding because of all of the effort that's involved in unloading a truck, but I think it would really assist the board in understanding your position in this matter. And so I want you to just assume that a truck bound for delivery to Barton Solar showed up after hours, beyond the time allotted for delivery. And for some reason, and nobody was there from Barton Solar, none of your employees or anything. And for some reason, this driver was able to pull over into the laydown area and unload the truck and drive off, so that the next morning you showed up and all the infrastructure that particular truck was carrying was sitting in the laydown area. Is it your position that Barton Solar would not be responsible for that delivery having been made out of hours, given the instructions that you gave and so forth, all the things that Ms. Remington asked you about earlier today?
Would be responsible for that delivery.
Responsible for it occurring outside of the allowable hours.
Responsible in what regard?
Do you think that the board would have a basis to have you in here to review whether that was a violation of the CPG?
Well, I guess my position is, if I acted prudently in instructing the people that were making that delivery when they were supposed to be there, and if I acted prudently in reinforcing that, and I acted prudently in not creating a situation which would facilitate that delivery at night, and I acted prudently in ensuring that there would be it would require some Herculean effort to make that delivery, which is out of the ordinary course, and that were to happen, I'm not sure how Barton Solar and me, I'm responsible for that, because the sort of corollary to that is I contracted to have modules manufactured and delivered from Hong Kong. If one of those long-haul carriers gets in a car accident in St. Louis, is that my fault? If one of those long-haul carriers unfortunately strikes and kills somebody in St. Johnsbury, is that my fault? I contracted with a company to manufacture modules and deliver them to our site. I gave them specific instructions, when to deliver and where to deliver. I basically facilitated that delivery by orchestrating machinery and the equipment necessary and the manpower. I did not instruct them to do anything other than deliver to that location. I did nothing that instruct them to deliver at certain times. I only had the equipment and the manpower there available to offload their truck at the times that we designated. I'm not sure how I can, it's somehow incumbent upon me to ensure that they operate in some ordinary course in the entire rest of their life.
Well, we're not talking about the rest of their life. We're talking about when they're engaged in activities that are governed by the terms and conditions of the CPG.
Well, again, I guess the hypothetical would be, does that extend all the way back to Hong Kong? Because
the CPG doesn't regulate what happens in Hong Kong. It regulates what happens at the project site and the laydown area. What I'm trying to understand is, if in spite of your best intentions, a contractor, subcontractor of that person does something that violates the CPG, is it not your problem because you instructed them otherwise?
I'm only going to object insofar as I think there may be a misunderstanding, and I think this maybe go to the nut. The Supreme is not a contractor or subcontractor of Barton Solar. They were a vendor, and under, this is the point that Ms. Remington was making with Mr. Grant in terms of that contract, that delivery flow in the normal course of these commercial transactions. That deliverer was a contractor for the vendor, not for Barton Solar. There was no agency or any kind of respondent superior or any kind of relationship between so the analogy is inapt. The right analogy would be RBI, who is both a vendor and a contractor, an agent of Barton Solar to actually do the construction. And so I'm only object insofar as there's a legal assumption in the question that's inconsistent with both the terms of the contract and the commercial law that governs these kinds of transactions, both nationally and internationally. It's something that I'll brief, but I just wanted you to be aware that the terminology that keeps being used about the delivery driver being a Barton Solar subcontractor is just legally not correct.
Okay, well, I think the board would be very interested to learn if it was in fact Barton Solar's position that it has no responsibility to make sure that the deliveries come in compliance with the CPG. But I'll look forward to seeing your legal argument on that.
Well, no, and I think Mr. Grant did say, and he provided all of the instructions. All I'm saying is
I look forward to your legal argument on this, Cadwell.
Yeah.
And by the way, if I may
Sure.
interject, I did not say that we had no responsibility. What I did try to illuminate is we took every prudent action that we could think of to ensure that the operation was in compliance with our CPG.
And you did that because you felt responsible, yes?
I did that because I felt responsible. I did that because that's what the terms and conditions of the permit under which I was operating.
Okay. In your recent affidavit, you stated that you were out of earshot of the conversation between Mr. Menard and the truck driver, correct?
Correct.
And in your October 21st response, you characterized Mr. Menard as accosting the truck driver, and I believe you used that word again today. If you couldn't hear the conversation, why did you characterize what was happening as Mr. Menard accosting the truck driver?
Well, because Mr. Menard got out of his truck and he accosted me, and I had firsthand knowledge of that. And then he pivoted and he moved down the truck basically into the space of the driver, using the same physical mannerisms that he'd been using with me.
So you were paying attention to the interaction, but you just couldn't hear it?
Oh, no, I actually observed him go towards the driver and get to the driver, and I actually moved away.
Okay.
Because I didn't want to have any allegations that I was somehow involved,
Mhm.
or
I'm curious about, you have the October 21st response in front of you. Paragraph 15. It says, as it pertains to the comments alleged by Mr. Menard to have come from me, they are false. And you go on to say, I did tell him that we had the delivery scheduled, that there was no control over the logistics carrier making the delivery other than to designate the time and place of the delivery and describe the contracted relationship. In the Menard's complaint, the only thing I see him attributing to you in terms of the statement is that you said that you did not have control over the truck driver, which seems consistent with paragraph 15. With the second part of paragraph 15, I'm curious what statements he attributed to you that you say are false, since the only thing he filed at that point was the initial complaint.
I'd have to look at the original letter that he submitted. Anybody have a copy of that?
Of this? No, I think he's looking for a copy of something.
I guess the original.
Oh, your original
October-
response?
No, he wants the Menard allegations.
I've got it here.
Or-
Let the record reflect I'm showing or handing to Mr. Grant a document dated October 5th, 2014, addressed to the board from Anthony and Monica Menard. I just ask you if you recognize that?
Yes.
And is that the document you were referring to in your October 21st response at paragraph 15? Where it says, as it pertains to the comments alleged by Mr. Menard to have come from me, they are false?
I think I'm confused about which document. You said October 5th, the one from Menard's.
The Menard's complaint dated October.
The original complaint?
Yes.
Okay.
Do you have a copy of the board's memo, like that cover memo?
No, I think so. I do, just one second.
I only have Mr. Carter, I'm handing the witness a copy of the October 10th memo that accompanied the complaint, because the complaint wasn't actually sent to Barton Solar until this memo.
Yes, okay.
Okay. I'm sorry, what was the question there?
The question is, paragraph 15 of your October 21 response starts off, as it pertains to the comments alleged by Mr. Menard to have come from me, they are false. And I'm curious what comments you are referring to when you say that they are false, given that the only thing Mr. Menard had filed at that point was the October 5th complaint.
He's trying to ask what the bottom line.
not sure exactly. I think it could be that I was referring to, Mr. Menard had alleged that we had some kind of a delivery that was scheduled for that evening, which
But
we
that's-
never did.
It's not in that October 5th document, is it, that statement?
Well, there's reference to a 9 PM, a truck arriving on October 2nd at 9 PM. I may have inferred from that he thought we had a delivery schedule.
He's not attributing that to you as a statement from you, is he, in that October 5th filing?
Well, he's basically alleging that the tractor trailer did show up at 9 o'clock on the 2nd, that he spoke to me, that I said I didn't have any control over these trucks, but the inference is that we had I took it as an inference that we had scheduled a delivery for the night before.
Okay.
And that was the basis of his complaint for the delivery having been made and the fact that we were responsible for it.
I understand. I just need, and I think Leslie would probably like the cover memo back.
Okay.
I want to mark the October 21 response from Mr. Grant as Exhibit Board 1. And absent any objection, I would like to put that in the evidentiary record.
But you mean the October, you mean Barton Solar's response?
Yes. October 20.
Mr. Grant's own words, you would like?
That is correct.
There is no objection.
All right, then Exhibit Board 1 is admitted, and Joanne, I'll get that marked for you. Do you need to take a look?
No.
Did you want to do some redirect of Mr. Grant?
Yeah.
Mr. Grant, we'll start with one of you first. You wish that you had a lawyer to help you draft your original response to the department's memo?
I guess in hindsight, as I sit here today, yes.
Can you explain, I know that Mr. Cotter asked a lot of the same questions that...
That was my thinking.
Mr. Cotter asked a lot of the same questions that Ms. Cadwell and I asked you about in relation to your interaction with the driver. And we grilled you on what you had said to the driver. What were you doing? Why didn't you ask the driver more questions? And can you just reiterate what you were doing when this was all happening?
Well, basically, we were in the middle of accepting this delivery and orchestrating the offloading, the sorting, and inspection of this delivery.
Do you have any concept that, this I did not ask you at the time, but how much maybe that one load would have been worth? I mean, just general figures.
In terms of
10,000?
what-
How much money was at stake in that truck that you were watching?
I'll give you my calculator. I can tell you exactly. If I didn't, I wouldn't be doing my job.
Do you want my calculator or you want your calculator?
I'll give you mine. Do you want it to the penny, or do you want
No,
approximation?
just real general, I mean, just an idea, because the board oftentimes doesn't have that kind of knowledge.
7, 8, 2 times 22. It's about $370,000.
So would it be fair to say that in the moment, you were more concerned about the $375,000 load you had on the line than what a driver who barely spoke English's interaction with Mr. Menard was?
I guess it's a fair statement to say that concerned about the contents of the truck, the 3 pieces of machinery we were orchestrating to offload the truck, the 5 people I had standing there who, again, are focused on offloading the truck and not focused on building the array, which is the other part of the job. All within the context of trying to get it done in the ordinary course and as quickly as possible, I would say, yeah, there was a lot going on.
That being said, did you take the conditions in your CPG seriously?
I would say that we've taken them very seriously. I think that if you ask anyone who's been involved in the oversight of this project, if you ask anybody has worked on the project or is in close proximity or is a related professional on this project, I think you'll find that we continue to take the conditions of our CPG very seriously.
Thank you.
Okay, sworn out, unless the department. Don't say I didn't offer. Your excuse, Mr. Grant. Yeah, I know. Sorry.
I was going to say, I was going to say, the other thing I could have said when you tried to swear me in was I object.
Right. That's my other attempt. Right.
So,
Careful, Bob.
at this point, I know it's a little odd in a board proceeding, but I would make a motion to dismiss because there's no material fact in dispute.
Well, Ms. Remington, the reason that is extremely odd is that I don't have the authority to dismiss an action.
So you'll take it under advisement?
I will certainly take it under advisement.
Thank you.
I'm not sure that I can do much with it now.
Can we have just 3 minutes?
Sure.
Part of it is I need to drink a little bit of water.
Yeah, you sound like you do.
Thanks.
So we'll go off the record for a few minutes.
Okay. Pardon me.
Okay, we can go back on the record. Ms. Skyball?
I'd like to call Charles Grant to the witness stand, please.
After Ms. Grant, raise your right hand, please. Do you swear or affirm under the penalty of perjury that the testimony you're about to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? I do. Thank you very much.
Could you please state your name for the record?
Charlie Grant.
And how are you involved in Barton Solar, Mr. Grant?
I am employed full-time as a project manager.
And do you have any other role in Barton Solar?
I would say that my role spans a number of disciplines within the overall management of the project, but essentially that's it. Oh, actually, I take it back. I'm also a 10% stakeholder in the energy.
Thank you. What were your general responsibilities for Barton Solar before and during construction?
Before and during construction, I was responsible for reviewing in detail the various permit conditions that we were to operate under, cataloging those conditions, documenting those conditions, and then both communicating those conditions to all of our subcontractors as well as making sure that those conditions were met and complied with.
And is it fair to say that there were more than just a couple of conditions that applied to the permits to construct the Barton Solar project?
Yes, that would be fair.
Did you prepare a spreadsheet?
I did. It was helpful for me to organize the myriad of conditions that we had to comply with in that form because there were so many.
And is this something, a document that you referred to throughout the course of construction as the project was progressing?
That's correct.
And how, can you explain just generally how the CPG conditions and other permit conditions were relayed to your contractors and subcontractors working on the project?
So, first and foremost, as you know, we operated under a number of different permits, both at the state, federal, and, well, yeah, just the state and federal level. So, what we did is we actually compiled a binder which we called the permit book, which contained a complete copy of every single permit, and we distributed a copy of that binder to each of the major subcontractors, of which there were 3. We were going to be spending the most time on the project. We distributed this to them. We then also communicated to them various memorandums, just sort of the highlights saying, hey, these are the, just remember these are the most important conditions for you to be aware of while you operated. We then established a regular meeting schedule during which we met with the contractors periodically to review the, first we had a dedicated meeting to go over permit conditions, but then throughout the course of the project we had project meetings on a weekly basis where we would remind them of various elements elements of the project in the way that we want business to be conducted. And then during the actual construction activities, we would be physically in the project site with the contractors, monitoring their activities and making sure that they didn't do anything that they were not supposed to.
And you said the regular meetings, were those what I understand the Monday morning meetings?
That's correct. They were typically on Monday morning at 8 a.m.
And did they also include the civil and electrical engineer that helped design the project and testified before the board?
Yes, both Brian Browning and Ian Jukes regularly attended those meetings.
And were they also aware of the CPG conditions?
They were.
And the conditions in the wetland permit?
Yes.
Did you have occasion to view the Menards driveway over the course of construction throughout the summer and fall?
Yes, I would say that I passed by the Menards driveway at least once, if not twice, per day for a period of about 3 months.
And do you recall an occasion where your father asked you to go to photograph the Menards driveway on October 3rd?
I do remember that.
And what, if anything, did you observe?
I observed the Menards driveway to the basis of my familiarity with their driveway. It looked the same as it did every other day.
Now, did you actually step onto their property and inspect their lawn that day?
No, I did not.
And why not?
Because it's their property, and I figured that without the opportunity to ask for permission to enter their property, I was not to go there.
Did you see any damage to their lawn?
No.
Are there no trespassing signs in front of the Menards driveway?
Not that I'm aware of.
Is the driveway, is there a chain?
No.
Did you ever witness any other trucks or vehicles coming in and out of the Menards driveway over the course of the time this construction project was ongoing?
Yes, and with some regularity.
And were those large trucks?
They were.
Did you ever have an occasion after October 3rd to view an aerial photograph of the Menards property?
Yes, I did.
And did you observe any damage to their property?
No, I did not.
Did you observe any broken fence or tire tracks on their lawn?
No, I did not.
And how is it that you viewed this aerial photograph?
How is it? I viewed a digital photograph on my computer.
And do you know the person who took that photograph?
Yes, I do.
Okay, and was it someone who, could you describe how the photograph was taken?
There's an amateur photographer in the area who employs the use of what is commonly called drones, or an unmanned aerial vehicle. It's a little, essentially what looks like a toy helicopter, or a recreational helicopter. And he stopped by the site. He's a hobbyist. He kind of does this of his own volition. And he said, "Hey, I'm interested in taking a picture of your solar farm. Would you mind if I did that?" And we said, "Yeah, that'd be great. And if you could distribute us a copy of those photographs, we'd love to have them."
And in the course of that distribution, is that when you saw that he had taken a photograph of the Menards property?
Yes. I did not schedule him to come by at all. He came and went as he pleased. And later after the fact, he said, "Hey, these are some pictures that I took on this day."
And are you aware of any deliveries having been made for Barton Solar outside the days and hours prescribed by the Public Service Board and the CPG?
No, I'm not.
Okay. Did you ever authorize a contractor or any subcontractor for Barton Solar to deliver goods, equipment, or materials outside of the days, hours, and locations authorized in the CPG?
No, I did not.
Did you ever authorize any contractor or subcontractor for Barton Solar to use the Menards property for construction purposes, including turnaround?
No, and to the best of my abilities, I discouraged them from going anywhere near Mr. Murdoch's property.
I'm going to hand you what's been marked and identified as Barton 3. Is that an Act 250 permit? Is that correct?
Yes, it is.
And did you pull that from the land records yourself?
Yes, I did.
I'd like to offer Barton 3.
Hearing no objection?
No objection.
And I'm handing you now what's been marked as Barton 4. Did you get one too, John?
Yes.
Okay, great. Could you please identify that for the record?
It's an application for a zoning permit for the town of Barton.
And is that a document that you pulled from the land records in Barton?
Yes, it is.
I'd like to offer Barton 4 into record.
No objections.
Barton 4 is admitted.
Mr. Grant, are you aware of any occasion where Barton Solar violated the terms and conditions of its CBG during construction?
No, I'm not.
Thank you, I have nothing further.
I just have a couple of quick questions. I'm sorry, I missed the date that you said the aerial photograph of the Menards property was taken.
The date it was taken was October 4th.
Oh, okay, great, thanks. Are you familiar with the complaint, the actual paper documents that Menards filed?
I'm aware that they were filed. I'm not intimately familiar with the complaint itself.
Did you see the photographs that accompanied it?
Briefly, yes, I reviewed it. I will state, or I will note that the pictures as they were photocopied, they're in black and white, and it's very difficult for me to perceive what's being displayed in the picture. I don't know if the original photographs are perhaps in color, but the version that I saw was black and white.
Did the well, I'm going to actually just show you one and ask you if you recognize it. This is a photograph that was appended to their complaint. Does that look familiar to you?
Yes, I believe I've seen this picture before.
Okay, now would you agree with me that that picture shows tire tracks of some sort on their lawn?
I would agree that I can make out what appears to be a house which looks similar to the Menards house, and I see a number of lines. They could be tire tracks, but I can't confirm that that's what they are.
Okay. And so is it your testimony that this photograph, whatever these markings are on the ground that you were just looking at, is not an accurate representation of what the Menards property looked like on October 3rd when you went to look at it?
I will say that when I went to inspect that property on the morning of October 3rd, I did not see any markings that resembled the ones that you just showed.
In that photo. Okay, thank you. Any redirect?
I'm just curious, Mr. Grant, assuming the picture that the hearing officer showed you did show tire tracks, are you able to discern whether those tire tracks could be made by a 73-foot long tractor trailer?
No.
Okay, fair enough, thanks.
Okay, your excuse? Ms. Grace, I'm just going to assume that if you have an objection or a question, you're going to pipe right up and let me know.
Sounds like a fabulous assumption.
Okay.
Okay, I call Rob Grant, please. We don't need those.
Mr. Grant, please raise your right hand. Do you swear or affirm on the promises of perjury that the testimony you're about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? I do. Thank you very much. Ms. Cavell?
Thank you. Could you please state your name for the record?
My name's Rob Grant.
And how are you involved with the Barton Solar Project?
I was the environmental compliance officer for the project.
And what, other than having the last name Grant, what made you qualified to do that, Mr. Grant?
I have a bachelor's in environmental science from the University of Delaware, and I've worked in commercial and residential scale construction in the solar industry for 2 years.
Ms. Cavell, if I could just interrupt really quickly. Rob Grant, not the same Robert Grant that was testifying earlier today, I take it?
Yes.
Okay, just want to make it clear that we have two individuals with the same name.
I very much appreciate the clear record that you're creating, Mr. Hearing Officer.
Somebody's going to read the transcript.
Or I should say, Hearing Officer Cotter or Mr. Cotter.
Please continue.
Thank you. What were your general responsibilities as the environmental compliance monitor for the project?
I had two main responsibilities. The first was to ensure that we were in compliance with all the conditions of various permits that we've been issued, and interacting with the contractors and subcontractors that were working on the project to make sure they followed the rules and regulations and stayed within the established areas. And the second responsibility was to submit bi-weekly reports of the compliance activities we had undertaken and also the overall progress of the project to Shannon Morrison of Vermont Department of Wetlands.
And Sharon Morrison's not in this room, is that right? There's nobody from A&R here in the room, is that right? Okay.
I can't speak to that. But
Okay.
I know Shannon Morrison isn't here.
Fair enough. And based on your observation and reports to A&R, how would you describe Barton Solar's compliance with its CPG and the other environmental permits?
I would say that we did the best we could to comply with any and all regulations, and I don't believe we violated any of the conditions of our permit.
Did you fulfill the obligation to file reports with Shannon Morrison?
I did.
And did you, was there ever a time since the beginning of construction through today where any state agency or other authority, permitting authority, has come to you and alleged a violation of a permit condition?
No.
Are you aware of any violations of Barton Solar's permits?
No.
If you were aware, would you bring that to the attention of Barton Solar?
Yes.
Did you happen to observe any damage to the Menards property on October 3rd or after?
No.
And were you present at Menards property on October 2nd?
I
At 9
didn't know
p.m.?
the Menards property, no.
Are you aware of any Barton Solar contractor being present on the Menards property at any time during construction?
No.
Thank you, I have nothing further.
Okay, I have no questions for you, so you're excused. So I take it we're all done with witnesses?
Yes.
So then, where we are at then is, in the notice of the hearing, the board indicated that parties would have an opportunity to file legal memoranda setting forth their positions after the hearing. It's not a requirement, so I guess I'm asking Ms. Cadwell if you'd like that opportunity.
Sorry, I was gonna make a smart aleck remark like, of course! But you can't quite get the tone in the transcript. Yes, absolutely, we'd like to brief this, and then we may be filing a motion to dismiss based on the fact there's absolutely no evidence and competent evidence in the record that there's been any violation of a CBG or that anything happened the night before the October 3rd delivery.
Right, okay. Yeah, as I said, I think at that point...
We'll brief it.
Yeah.
I will put the motion in writing.
Well, I would say that the motion strikes me as kind of a clumsy thing because it's been assigned to a hearing officer, and I don't believe that I have the authority to dismiss an investigation that the board initiated. I suppose I could recommend to the board that it do so, but anyway, so any particular date in mind? You can pick whatever you want.
Can I just confer for just 1 minute?
Yeah, of course.
Or this is. You think I don't want to do? I'd like to get it soon, but the end of next week seems fast. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Perfect. And then we'll handle it or something. Okay. Yep. So how about February 12th? That will. You're not going to file anything, Sheila, are you? Okay. I'm happy to write something on your behalf. February 12th, we'd like to file probably a motion to dismiss along with a legal memorandum. I'm just going to cover all my bases for the client. And if we could, with your permission, file electronically with a hard copy the day after.
Those two, February 12th, you said?
Yes. Did I say 12th or did I say the 11th? I said 12th, yes.
Do you want to just say February 13th?
Well, here's the reason. From Castleton, it sometimes takes 3 days to get here. Apparently they use pony or donkey. And so that's the only reason. I don't mind.
I mean, you can just pick the date on which you think it is going to get here.
Oh, then Monday the 15th.
If we file it early, that's fine.
Yeah, perfect. I like it. We'll do it Monday the 16th.
16th.
Yes.
Is that President's Day?
Oh, God, isn't it a holiday?
Yeah.
Oh, make it sound like it's a bad thing.
Well, you know me.
So,
Do
so
some
we're,
work.
17.
we're Tuesday, 2/17.
Okay,
Yeah, but we'll try to have it.
yeah, we'll have
Okay,
it.
well, if it
Do it.
gets, great, if it comes in early, it comes in early.
Yeah.
So,
Great.
okay, I guess that's it for today.
Thank you.
So we are adjourned. Thank you, everybody.